Okay, here we go. Over the years I did two sorts of mining. I did mining in South Australia in sandstone where the opal occurs, infilling cracks. That's called pockets. So you get this beautiful seam of opal. Sometimes those pockets can be 20 metres long, sometimes they're the size of a plate. They can vary from a half a millimetre to almost 20 millimetres in thick. And the quality can vary from junk to absolute gems.
So you'd be pretty excited if you found a 20mm one.
You get very excited if you get any opal. If you dig this sort of stuff without colour for 3 or 4 months, that's pretty boring. So as soon as you get any sort of colour at all, your hair stands on end, you get goosebumps, just incredible. And then sometimes you get seam opal in the sandstone that's black opal, and that can become very valuable, very thick. And you can see the difference in colour. This is light based, that's dark based. Dark based opal is called black opal. It can be very valuable, particularly if it's got red. Unfortunately this one doesn't, but we have found some with red. And this stuff is called Boulder Opal. This is where we were mining up in Queensland. Boulder Opal is formed in these ironstone, they're sort of like a pudding, and they dry out and they crack, and the opal fills in the cracks. Sometimes the opal has no colour, and sometimes it's beautiful, and sometimes it can be very valuable. And you can cut stones out of sections. Even though the boulder is really big, it takes a lot of time to process and cut it. You've got to saw the opal out, and then you've got to select the section with the colour, and then you get to polish it. So you might end up out of this piece with 200 or 300 stones. The other choice is you can carve it and make beautiful carvings highlighting the opal. You can make wonderful specimens. You can do little sections, cross sections. There's just so much choice. There's 1,001 ways to get the opal out of this. And this opal goes all the way through it. You can see it both sides, all the way round. So you can imagine the amount of work to get from here to the finished stage. It might be weeks and weeks and weeks of sawing and cutting just to finish that one piece.
Now with the seam opal it's pretty obvious where you're going to cut, whereas with the boulder opal, because you don't know what's underneath the surface of each part, you'd have to be very, very careful as you were cutting that you didn't cut through a valuable piece.
That's exactly right. It's a bit like a Rubik's Cube, this sort of stuff. There's 1,001 ways to do it, and the more experience a cutter has, the better he is at being able to get the combination right. And then an experienced cutter might end up with $500 worth of opal, and an experienced cutter might turn out with $10,000 worth. But he's reading it. He's reading it three-dimensionally. He understands where the opal is. He knows the thickness of the seam and where the best opal is likely to be compared to the lower quality opal. So he's going to take more time and more care sawing through the good areas. Then it decides on the size of the stone. A big stone doesn't make it more valuable, but 3 small stones perfectly cut with a lot of colour can be worth more than a stone 10 times the size. So there's a lot to it. This is an unusual boulder because it is quite big and has a lot of colour through it, and this is only about half the boulder. We've made specimens, we've got cut stones, we've got carvings, all made out of this one piece of opal. This is now at the stage where I'm thinking about what we're going to do next with one of these 2 pieces. And perhaps we might see this on video in the next 6 months or so, half finished and finished. We'll just see how we go.
Yeah, things like opalised belemnites and shells and things like that, they'd only be found in the sandstone, not necessarily with, but often near a seam. Or...
That's right, because a miner, when he's mining seam opal, is following what's called the level where the opal occurs. But often the fossils like shells and belemnites can occur anywhere within that sandstone. So a lot of them get missed, and occasionally someone that's noodling up top might get the thrill of their life and pick one up. You just never know on the opal fields. It's not just miners that find opal, but people just go to visit. It could also find something pretty special if they're lucky enough.
And what sort of conditions are needed for opal to form? Why is it that Australia seems to have more black opal than other countries? What causes the blackness in the opal to occur?
As far as my understanding is, they're not really sure. Carbon included in the opal can make it darker, and sometimes, like I have found, I've had seam opal forming and then hitting a bend and then turning into black opal almost instantly, and I've never been able to understand why it suddenly turned into black opal and stayed as sandstone. And there's a lot of difference between science and physical mining, because when you're mining you see things that scientists don't, and there are a lot of things that can't be explained. I've had a piece of crystal opal forming that way, turning at right angles, and had black opal going up that way, crystal opal going down this way. Never been able to explain that one. I wish I could.
And is black opal always better than crystal opal as far as a miner and a jeweller are concerned, or again does it depend on the quality of the black opal and the quality of the crystal opal?
It depends on the quality. I mean, an opal miner just loves to find high quality opal. I don't care what opal I find, but I would rather have high quality than low quality. My mining partner was only in it for money for many years, and he would be happy with a ton of potch that he could sell for $1, or one piece that he could sell for $1. It didn't matter for him as long as it was money. But for me, I would rather have something truly magnificent and beautiful that fitted into your hand than a truckload of low quality opal. And a lot of miners are that way. It's not the money that drives them, it's the beauty they find, and being the first person in the world ever to see it. That's always been my driving force anyway, just to see the beauty and see it in the ground, be the first person to see it. And then later on I like to be able to be the person that brings out the character, and that takes years and years of cutting. I've been cutting since I was 13, and I have never ever got sick of creating something out of a piece of rock like this and turning it into something that someone can wear and love and see the colour. It gives me great pleasure.
So the main thing is sort of what they call the play of colour, which gives it its value, is it?
It's the play of colour and how it's cut. The colour can change within half a millimetre, and you've got to be able to read it and see how the play of colour, how the colour moves, which way it moves, which way is the best way to bring it up, what's the top, what's the bottom, because they can be totally different if you cut it this way or if you cut it that way. So,
and the polishing can enhance that or totally destroy it if you're not careful.
Yeah, I mean, what normally happens, you can be cutting opal and you can cut the top off one and it's absolutely beautiful, so you'll spend another 5 or 6 hours cutting opal. Or you can have a really nice piece and you take a millimetre off it and the colour disappears, and you say, oh, stuff it, and you go and watch TV and you finish for the night. That's the way it goes when you're cutting opal.
So what have we got here, Peter?
Well, this is all seam opal from my days mining at Minterby. This has been kept in this box for over 20 years, and every now and then I look at it and see what I can do with it. So I'll show you some of the pieces and my ideas, and we'll see what happens. This one is seam opal. It's crystal opal. We've got lots of alternatives. First of all, we have to saw the opal out or take the top off it. Then we can have a look at the top and decide whether we want to make a specimen or whether we want to cut stones out of it. The colour looks pretty even all the way through, so I might be thinking of doing matched pairs, because it's very hard to get matched pairs, but this opal being so uniform, there might be 15 or 20 matched pairs in there, so that's what we might do with that one. This one, the opal's thin, but has really nice colour, and the seam goes all the way through it, so it's quite a big piece. My gut feeling with this one would be to take the top bit off all the way around, have a look at all the opal, and then probably make something special, a carving. I'm thinking that this is going to be predominantly blue-green with a little bit of yellow. Take the top off, we've got a beautiful face here. We could do some, depending on what we've got, some fish swimming in it and a little bit of seaweed. Just make something that is unique, because pieces this size, basically impossible to get now. There's very few mines operating at Medebi now, and very few anyway produced opal in a hard band like this. So they're pretty special pieces, so it's best not to, for me, to cut them up into tiny bits and look typical, but rather try and create something that someone can treasure and someone can look at it and probably keep the base on it untouched, polish the seam, do something that means something, and put it on a lovely stand and people can look at it for years. This is a bit different. This is seam black opal from Medebi. It's got beautiful blue bar right in the middle, which means it probably will face really quite nice. They'll be small stones, so there might be 30 or 40 small opals from half a carat to maybe 2 carats in there, and this will eventually be cut up into those stones, and maybe in 12 months' time someone's wearing them as earrings or something. Anywhere across the world, that's what's going to end up.
So you feel that one's too small to make a specimen one?
It probably could, but because it's black opal, it would be too valuable as a specimen. So when you cut a specimen, it might be worth a few $100s, but cutting to match stones and things like that, it could well be a couple of $1,000, maybe more. You don't really know until you never know until you've taken the top off, had a look, and then make your decision. It's just the thought process of not only myself but anyone else that cuts opal, especially from this stage. You don't know until you're halfway there. You have to be able to be adaptable, and you've got to be able to change your way of thinking instantly, just depending on what you get when you're dealt the cards. Even little ones like this. There might be one stone there, that's it, and the rest you throw away. But you don't really know till you have a look. But in any case, that's typical. That's a box of opal rough straight from the mine, from the sandstone. This one, for instance, has a nice colour scheme there. I'm thinking with this one, polish the surface, might make a really nice specimen. Something that is really truly unique, stand up, stick in front of somebody's computer, they can look at it. 101 things, but there's not much of this stuff around, so I like to keep these for people just to look at and admire.